Ladies and gentlemen, Hollywood thrives on secrets, but every once in a while, the whispers become so loud that even Tinseltown can't hide the cracks. This time, those cracks are forming around one of the most beloved stars of our era, Ryan Reynolds. What started as innocent behind-the-scenes support for his wife, actress Blake Lively, has spiraled into a storm of allegations, power struggles, and even whispers of blackmail. And in the middle of it all, director Justin Baldoni, a rising creative force who reportedly found himself in a standoff with Reynolds that may have reshaped the entire trajectory of their careers. But here's the kicker. This isn't just a feud. Rumors suggest it's a full-blown Hollywood chess match, where reputations, billion-dollar franchises, and personal legacies are on the line. So let's rewind the clock and unpack exactly how we got here. It all began when podcast giant Joe Rogan allegedly threw gasoline on the fire. During one of his blunt conversations, Rogan reportedly criticized Reynolds directly, accusing him of manipulative tactics, of trying to control narratives behind the scenes, and of crossing lines that even Hollywood insiders consider untouchable. Now, let's pause here. Rogan's comments often make headlines, but when they're directed at someone like Ryan Reynolds, a man with one of the cleanest, most marketable reputations in Hollywood, they hit differently. Because Ryan isn't just an actor, he's a global brand. He's Deadpool, the sarcastic anti-hero who turned Marvel on its head. He's the face behind Aviation Gin, the business mogul who sold Mint Mobile for a jaw-dropping fortune, the witty social media king adored by millions. So when Rogan's words surfaced, fans didn't just brush them off. They started asking questions. Why Ryan Reynolds? Why now? And what exactly did Rogan know? To understand the storm, we need to revisit It Ends With Us. Based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, the film was supposed to be a straightforward triumph. Justin Baldoni was at the helm, bringing his heartfelt, emotional directing style to the screen. Blake Lively had signed on to play Lily Bloom, a role that fans considered tailor-made for her. The hype was real. The studio had confidence. The cast and crew felt energized. On paper, everything aligned for box office success. And then, Ryan Reynolds entered the picture. Now let's be clear. Reynolds wasn't officially attached to the project in any capacity. No producer credit, no contractual authority. He was at least on the surface just a supportive husband visiting set. But according to multiple insiders, his involvement grew deeper than anyone expected. At first, it seemed harmless. He'd stop by, offer encouragement, maybe joke with the crew. Classic Ryan. But soon, reports suggested he wasn't just visiting. He was weighing in, asking about creative choices, offering opinions on scenes, and eventually, allegedly pushing for real influence. This is where things get messy. Rumors began circulating that Reynolds wanted more than casual involvement. Allegedly, he pushed for casting adjustments, script rewrites, even camera angles for key scenes. Some whispers went further, suggesting he was maneuvering for an uncredited producer role, the kind of hidden influence that would give him power without the official title. Think about that. A superstar stepping into a project he wasn't hired for, reportedly steering it in directions that fit his vision. And while Hollywood is no stranger to powerful actors flexing their influence, this situation was different. Because standing across from Reynolds wasn't just any director. It was Justin Baldoni, a man with his own strong vision, reputation, and determination to bring It Ends With Us to life authentically. So what happens when two strong personalities collide? Sources claim Baldoni resisted. He allegedly pushed back, insisting on maintaining control over his film. He had worked for years to adapt Hoover's novel, carefully shaping the script and tone. To suddenly hand that over, even to someone as powerful as Reynolds, was reportedly unthinkable. And here's where whispers of tension began. Crew members described subtle unease on set. Meetings that ran longer than expected. Conversations behind closed doors that left people whispering in hallways. At this point, the conflict was still mostly hidden. But those close to the production could sense something brewing. And caught directly in the middle, Blake Lively herself. Imagine being Blake. On one hand, she was the star of the film, committed to Baldoni's vision, responsible for bringing Lily Bloom to life. On the other, she was married to Ryan Reynolds, a man who wasn't just a partner at home, but one of the most powerful voices in Hollywood. Reports suggest she tried to mediate at times, smoothing tensions where she could. Other accounts claim she deliberately stepped back, refusing to choose sides. Either way, insiders agree on one thing. The pressure on Blake was immense. Because no matter what she did, one side risked feeling betrayed. And in Hollywood, betrayal has a way of making headlines. And then came the whispers that turned this story from mere tension into potential scandal. According to rumors, Reynolds may have had some kind of leverage over Baldoni. Something sensitive. Something powerful enough to change the balance of power behind the scenes. What was it? No one knows for sure. Some allege it involved personal matters from Baldoni's private life. Others speculate it tied back to business dealings, financial disputes, or past controversies waiting to be unearthed. Regardless of the truth, the effect was the same. People began to wonder if Reynolds was quietly holding something over Baldoni. And whether that leverage was real or imagined, it cast a long shadow over everything that followed. At first, attempts were made to resolve the conflict quietly. Private meetings, phone calls, efforts to smooth things over. But Baldoni reportedly stood firm. He refused to compromise his vision. And as time passed, the disagreements grew harder to hide. Crew members noticed. Industry whispers spread. And soon rumors of a power struggle spilled beyond the set. What began as a personal conflict between two men had become a Hollywood talking point. And this was only the beginning. The buzz didn't end with casual speculation. By the time It Ends With Us entered its most crucial production stages, new Hollywood whispers began spreading like wildfire. Some insiders, always speaking on background, never publicly, suggested that Ryan Reynolds was not simply supporting his wife through her new starring role. Instead, they claimed there may have been a more complicated power dynamic at play. Now let's pause here for a moment. In Hollywood, leverage isn't always loud. It's not always a headline, a lawsuit, or a screaming match. More often, it's whispered in quiet meetings, hinted through contracts, or woven into promises that never quite make it to print. Allegedly, Reynolds had positioned himself as more than just the supportive spouse. According to some accounts, he may have been leveraging his status, his connections, and his massive fan base to ensure the production bent in his direction. But leverage in Hollywood can be a dangerous game. Once whispers begin, they spread. And soon enough, whispers turned into rumors of blackmail. Now, let's be crystal clear. Nothing has been proven. These are claims and suggestions, not facts. But the fact that so many insiders were suddenly using the word blackmail, whether fair or not, it was telling. Some speculated that Reynolds may have known information about Baldoni, information powerful enough to make the director hesitate. Others suggested it wasn't information at all, but the threat of public perception. Imagine this. You're Justin Baldoni, a respected actor and director trying to bring a beloved novel to the big screen. Now imagine Ryan Reynolds, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, standing in the wings. He doesn't need to say much. The sheer power imbalance speaks for itself. If Reynolds were to even hint at dissatisfaction publicly, on social media, in a sly interview comment, or even through silence, it could jeopardize the film's success. That, some say, was the real leverage. Caught in the middle of all of this was Blake Lively herself. She wasn't just another actress in the film, she was the face of It Ends With Us. The entire marketing campaign would inevitably be built around her. She also wasn't just another Hollywood star. She was Ryan Reynolds' wife, the mother of his children, and, at least publicly, his strongest ally. So imagine the weight she must have carried. On one hand, a director trying to do his job. On the other hand, a husband whose shadow loomed over every production choice. Reportedly, some crew members began to notice the tension. Whispers of disagreements on set, rumors of private arguments, and questions about who was really calling the shots. Was Blake supporting her husband's alleged influence? Or was she quietly trying to keep the peace? That question remains unanswered, but the speculation around her role only fueled the fire. By this stage, the mainstream media had started circling. At first, it was just gossip blogs. But soon, larger outlets began hinting at creative disagreements and behind-the-scenes disputes. The language was careful, as it always is in Hollywood. No one wanted to risk being sued. But the message was clear. Something was happening on that set. What exactly it was, no one could say for sure. But the narrative began to form. Ryan Reynolds wasn't just a husband cheering from the sidelines. He was an active force in the production. And depending on who you asked, he was either a lifeline or a liability. As production pushed forward, the alleged divide only seemed to grow wider. Some insiders leaned toward Baldoni, praising his sensitivity, his emotional storytelling, and his vision. Others leaned toward Reynolds, admiring his star power and questioning why anyone would resist his involvement when he could bring so much publicity. was no longer just a film, it was a chess match. Each move made carefully, each whisper carrying weight. And as the tension simmered, the stage was being set for something no one could have predicted. A public shot fired through the world of Deadpool. By the time the Deadpool 3 marketing cycle began, the whispers around "it ends with us" hadn't fully settled. But what came next reignited the speculation and magnified it on a global scale. Because Deadpool isn't just a movie franchise. It's a cultural phenomenon. The character is known for breaking the fourth wall, mocking Hollywood itself, and taking shots at real people, always hidden under the veil of comedy. So when fans spotted a new character named Nicepool in Deadpool 3's teasers, curiosity quickly turned to suspicion. At first glance, Nicepool seemed like just another Deadpool gag. He was presented as the opposite of Wade Wilson, overly polite, overly wholesome, even awkwardly earnest. But here's where things got messy. Fans online immediately started drawing comparisons between Nicepool and Justin Baldoni. Think about it. Baldoni's public image has always been rooted in sincerity. He's been called Hollywood's good guy, an advocate for men's emotional vulnerability, and a director passionate about telling sensitive stories. Now all of a sudden here comes Nicepool, a character mocked for being too good, too sensitive, too earnest. Coincidence? Or a deliberate jab? Almost overnight, Reddit threads, Twitter debates, and YouTube breakdowns exploded with theories. Some fans argued Nicepool was clearly satire aimed at Baldoni. Others said it was just Reynolds doing what he always does, mocking tropes, mocking archetypes, mocking himself. A few even suggested it might have been a studio decision to parody a new kind of superhero archetype. But one thing was undeniable. The similarities between Baldoni's image and Nicepool's traits were hard to ignore. And when a scandal is already brewing in the background, coincidences rarely stay coincidences in the public eye. Here's the real question. Was Nicepool just a clever parody? Or was it an intentional dig at a real person? If it was satire, fine. Deadpool has always been satire. That's part of its DNA. But if it was personal, if it was directed at Baldoni, then the game changes. Suddenly, Deadpool 3 isn't just a film. It's a weapon. It's Reynolds allegedly using his global platform to undermine a fellow director. And the reaction to that possibility was intense. Entertainment journalists began to pick up on the debate. While no one dared make outright accusations, several outlets ran pieces with headlines like, "Is Deadpool mocking a real Hollywood director?" "Nicepool controversy, satire, or subtext?" "Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool pushes boundaries again. But did he go too far?" Insiders reportedly noted that Baldoni remained quiet, noticeably quiet. No tweets, no interviews, no public reaction. And sometimes silence speaks louder than any statement. Because here's the thing. In Hollywood, if you laugh something off, you're in control. But if you stay silent, that can look like you've been hit. The internet, as always, took sides. Team Reynolds. Fans who defended the gag as classic Deadpool humor, insisting critics were reading too much into it. Team Baldoni. Fans and commentators who argued that if the parody was aimed at Baldoni, then it was cruel, unnecessary, and damaging. The middle ground. Viewers who said it might not matter whether Reynolds intended it or not, because the perception was already cemented. Perception in Hollywood is powerful. Sometimes perception matters more than fact. And the perception here was clear. Reynolds had taken a shot, whether he meant to or not. What made this controversy so volatile was timing. Marvel and Disney had been banking on Deadpool 3 as one of their biggest hits. But suddenly, instead of the headlines being about box office numbers and cameo rumors, they were about an alleged feud buried in the film's jokes. Marvel executives, according to whispers, were not pleased. For a studio obsessed with controlling narratives, this was chaos. They'd spent years carefully curating the MCU brand, and now, Deadpool was dragging them into Hollywood gossip wars. It wasn't just a gag anymore. It was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. By the time the Nicepool controversy caught fire, the story had grown bigger than anyone expected. What started as a whisper behind the scenes of "It Ends With Us" had now bled into one of the most valuable film franchises in history. Marvel and Disney had been betting on Deadpool 3 to deliver massive box office numbers. The first two films combined had grossed over $1.5 billion globally. Ryan Reynolds wasn't just another star. He was the face of a property that represented both profits and prestige. So when Deadpool's humor risked dragging Marvel into a Hollywood feud, executives allegedly were furious. Marvel Studios, and by extension Disney, has built its empire on tight control. Every storyline, every casting decision, every press tour, nothing is left to chance. That control is why the MCU has been able to maintain a consistent brand for over a decade. But Deadpool is the exception. The character thrives on chaos, on breaking rules, on being offensive. Disney knew this when they acquired Fox and inherited Deadpool. They allowed Reynolds some freedom because he was proven box office gold. Yet freedom always comes with a line, and the whispers suggest Reynolds may have crossed it. Allegedly, Marvel executives began asking, is Ryan using Deadpool to fight his personal battles? If the answer was yes, that was unacceptable. Sources close to the studio, always speaking off the record, reportedly described tense closed-door meetings. Executives weighing the cost of pushing back against Reynolds versus the cost of letting the controversy spiral. On one hand, Reynolds was invaluable. His charm, his wit, his global appeal, these were assets Marvel could not easily replace. On the other hand, the longer the Nicepool debate dominated headlines, the more Marvel risked being seen as complicit in a feud they had no stake in. Imagine the optics. Disney, the family brand, allowing one of their stars to use their franchise as a platform for alleged mockery. That was not a narrative they wanted. Marvel's PR machine allegedly went into overdrive. Talking points were drafted. Press strategies were reconsidered. Reporters who asked direct questions were given vague, deflective answers. Behind the scenes, Reynolds himself reportedly faced gentle but firm pushback. It wasn't a public scolding. It never is, not at this level. But insiders whispered about tough conversations, where Marvel reminded Reynolds that Deadpool may be his baby, but it ultimately belonged to the Disney empire now. Control had shifted, and Reynolds, for the first time in years, may have felt the pressure of a machine bigger than himself. This question began circulating in Hollywood circles. Could Marvel actually cut ties with Ryan Reynolds? On the surface, the idea seemed impossible. Reynolds and Deadpool were inseparable. Recasting would risk fan outrage, box office losses, and years of brand damage. But in Hollywood, nothing is truly impossible. Studios have cut ties with stars before, sometimes abruptly, sometimes quietly. And while Reynolds' charm bought him goodwill, the Nicepool situation exposed a deeper fear, that he might be too powerful, too unfiltered, and too willing to use his platform for personal wars. Marvel reportedly weighed its options. Rein in Reynolds quietly and let Deadpool continue. Limit his creative control going forward. Begin contingency planning, just in case. Trade magazines began running speculative op-eds. Analysts debated whether Reynolds had overstepped. Some argued he was untouchable, that his box office power made him immune. Others said Marvel's track record of prioritizing brand over individual stars meant he was more vulnerable than people realized. After all, Marvel had recast beloved roles before. They'd parted ways with actors who caused PR headaches. And while Reynolds was bigger than most, even he wasn't bigger than Disney. The experts all agreed on one thing. If Marvel believed Reynolds' behavior threatened their brand, they would act. The ripple effects extended beyond Marvel. Hollywood insiders began asking uncomfortable questions. Was Reynolds leveraging his Deadpool platform against Baldoni? If so, what precedent did that set for other stars? And more importantly, could Disney allow their billion-dollar franchise to become entangled in what looked like a personal vendetta? Every time the Nicepool debate trended online, Disney executives reportedly grew more anxious. The studio was supposed to be celebrating a guaranteed hit. Instead, they were managing damage control. In Hollywood, the cameras stop rolling, but the drama never does. Stay tuned, because the next chapter might just change everything we thought we knew about Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and the empire behind Deadpool.